The Philadelphia Eagles traded a 2023 fifth round pick and a 2024 sixth round pick for slot cornerback Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. The Saints sent the Eagles a 2025 seventh round pick back. Ultimately, the compensation doesn't matter that much. New Orleans was not in a situation with their cap where they were going to be able to pay him, so they didn't have a lot of leverage. And so this is a great job by Howie Roseman of taking advantage of this opportunity. In today's video, I'm going to give you a full scouting report of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So if you're an Eagles fan, a Saints fan, or just a fan of the NFL in general, you'll hopefully get a really good synopsis of what to expect from him as a player. Over his 3 seasons in New Orleans, Chauncey Gardner has played 24% of his snaps in the box, 4% at deep safety, and 66% in the slot. So he's going to come in and be a great hybrid slot safety that can play man coverage, zone coverage. He can fit the run, which will allow Jonathan Gannon to play with a lighter box. He can play a lot of nickel and dime personnel and trust that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson will be able to defend the run from depth. And this was obviously a great move for the Philadelphia Eagles, not only because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a really good player, which we'll talk about, but because this was one of the biggest needs on their roster. Last year, the Eagles' pass defense was actually really good against wide receivers. They ranked 8th in EPA per play when the target was lined up out wide, but they had the 5th worst EPA per play when the target was lined up as a tight end or a slot receiver. Since he came into the league in 2019, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson leads all defenders in pass breakups from the slot. A lot of those pass breakups came in man coverage, which I think is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's biggest strength as a player. And the New Orleans Saints played by far the most cover 2 man in the NFL last season. And so Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was constantly asked to play man coverage on slot receivers. And against that defense, a lot of quarterbacks are going to be targeting Gardner-Johnson on hole shots. So on this play, the Saints are in 2-man, which a lot of people refer to as cover 5. The Seahawks are running a smash concept on the left side, and so this deep out to Freddie Swaim is going to be the best look for Geno Smith to go to because there's no way the safety is going to be able to get over to defend that. The Eagles will most likely play a lot of split safety coverages, and so they're going to be especially vulnerable to hole shots. So having a slot cornerback that can play match coverage and man coverage sometimes on wide receivers and defend deep corner routes, out routes, stuff to the sidelines, that really gives your defense a leg up because it's taking away one of the key weaknesses of the coverage that you're playing. I think he's a much better coverage corner than he gets credit for. He just really does not allow a lot of separation. You see here defending this pivot route, he just has the perfect combination of quickness, explosiveness, and route recognition. So his mind is connected to his body and that allows him to play fast. Something I've noticed that's very common with cornerbacks, especially playing in the slot, a lot of them are really good at defending either in breakers or out breakers, and then they're really bad at defending the other one. So like Christian Fulton, for example, is great defending passes over the middle, but then if you hit him with a deep out or something, his footwork gets all messed up and he just doesn't know how to cover it. With Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he can just flip his hips so quickly, and I was watching the first few games of him and he was biting on all of these deep outs and corner routes and stuff, and I was thinking like, man, if they hit him with a dig over the middle of the field, he's probably gonna allow a lot of separation. But then as I watched more and more, it's like, no, he's just as productive defending stuff in between the hashes. And then if you want to stretch him vertically, he also has the deep speed to keep up with pretty much anyone. Say what you want about Mecole Hardman, but he is not a player that struggles to take the top off of the defense. And then you combine this quick finesse element of his game with a physical element that allows him to be really effective covering tight ends. Because like we've mentioned, other than Kyle Pitts, there probably aren't many tight ends that are going to beat him over the top or consistently just beat him with route running. But he plays with such a physical edge, and he also is a physically strong player, and so he has no issues if he gets matched up with a tight end or a bigger slot. Having corners that are effective in man coverage allows you to do interesting things in terms of disguising the defense that you're playing. So they got Tom Brady a couple times with this similar sort of concept, but they basically bluff like they're playing cover 1, and the Buccaneers are running this scissor route from the Y in the slot. Tom Brady expects them to play lock man coverage, but they play banjo coverage, which is the technique of passing off these rub routes and switch releases and stuff like that. So Tom Brady isn't expecting Gardner-Johnson to be where he ends up. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a solid zone coverage corner. He can take advantage of opportunities when he's facing a quarterback like Sam Darnold or something, but his game is really man-to-man coverage and match coverage, which is good for the Eagles because Jonathan Gannon is going to be running a lot of quarters, and that usually turns into some form of man coverage throughout the play. But he's a really smart player, and when you're in a defense that is playing a lot of pattern match coverage where your assignment is switching in the middle of the play, it's important to have someone that is smart and instinctive. So on this play in the red zone, the Falcons are running a smash China concept, and China is sort of a family of passing concepts from the 3 wide receiver side, these quick in breakers or China routes from the outside 2 receivers, and then the route from the number 3 can change depending on the variation of the play. Russell Gage runs a pivot route from the slot and creates a little bit of separation, but instead of panicking, Gardner-Johnson recognizes the play, understands that the offense is trying to bait him inside and create space for this corner route in the back of the end zone, so he zones off, breaks up the pass. I don't want to imply that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson never gets beat. So I've mentioned that he's a great run defender. Sometimes he is a little bit too over-aggressive when it comes to fitting that C gap, and the Niners take advantage of it right here by leaking the tight end out. Gardner-Johnson doesn't pick up on the play quickly enough, and the tight end gets a step. He's not the type of corner that you're just never going to hear from like Sauce Gardner was in college, where his stat line is going to be like 2 targets, 1 catch for 3 yards. He's going to give up some big plays every now and then, but in those big moments on 3rd down in the red zone, that's where he really shows up. If you notice, a lot of these plays that I'm showing are against Patrick Mahomes, Matt Ryan, Tom Brady. He's not just cleaning up against the worst quarterbacks in the NFC. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has 2 main weaknesses as a player. The first one is tackling. He has the 5th most missed tackles among cornerbacks over the last 3 seasons, and that's really what causes him to give up big plays. It's not as often that the coverage is bad. The coverage is usually okay, and then he'll miss the tackle, and an 8-yard catch will turn into a 30-yard catch. Tackling has been an issue for all 3 seasons of his career, and so that's probably something that I would expect to continue, and it's just kind of one of the things you have to live with. The other thing that you have to live with, I guess depending how you look at it, is the penalties. There's not a lot of great resources for penalty stats in the NFL if you want to break it down and see who has the most personal fouls or something, but I would guess Gardner-Johnson is pretty high up there on that list because it felt like about 30% of the time that I found a play where he was involved, he ended up throwing somebody on the ground after the snap or swinging at someone on the sideline or something. And as a neutral observer of the NFC South, that's always kind of made me like him as a player just because it's entertaining when people stir up the pot. And I'm sure as an Eagles fan, your reaction will depend on the situation. He's probably going to have a few stupid penalties in bad situations, but I guess you could ask Saints fans how they feel about that. And then the last aspect of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's game that I want to mention is what he can do as a run defender. It's a cliche at this point to say that the NFL is a passing league. Everybody knows that. And the best way to limit explosive plays through the air is to play a lot more nickel and dime personnel and a lot less base personnel. And so if you're going to have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the field, he's going to be that nickel corner or sometimes even the dime linebacker. And a lot of times you're going to be playing a split safety defense with a light box. And so if he's going to be on the field, he's going to need to make up for that by being a really good run defender. And with screen passes, jet sweeps, normal running plays, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is one of the best run defenders from the slot that I've watched. And you can see that he really takes pride in that part of his game.